Jennifer Check was most likely born in 1992. I noticed the movie theater marquee in her town is showing Baby Mama and Forgetting Sarah Marshall, both of which came out in April 2008, and the script states that Jennifer is 16 years old. Jennifer grew up in a small town of just 7,000 known as Devil's Kettle, Minnesota, where she met her lifelong best friend, Anita Lesnicki, who became known as Needy for short due to her attachment to her more popular and outgoing friend. From the very beginning, Jennifer is in charge of the relationship, getting the better Barbies in the sandbox as kids, stealing Anita's toys, pouring lemonade on Anita's bed, mocking her for being scared of a boombox at Girl Scout camp, and eventually calling all the shots in the friendship as teenagers. Still, they remain attached, as evidenced by their matching BFF necklaces.
That's why we're Biffs.
Though, Needy's feelings for Jennifer seem to go beyond that. At one point, they got blitzed on peach schnapps, and Jennifer became her first kiss. She claims that they're not lipstick lesbos, as she puts it. In Jennifer's case, she seems to be bisexual, but she leans more towards being interested in men. While Jennifer was always a cruel friend, the onset of puberty really seems to magnify her behavior, and although Needy may not realize it yet, the reason Jennifer acts the way she does is out of insecurity. She does a number of things to cover this up, like hooking up with Eric Bogart at summer camp, losing her virginity in junior high, taking laxatives to stay skinny, spitting a lot of profanity, and wearing a mask of insincerity to hide the fact that she cares what people think about her. I mean, her vanity is filled with pictures of herself. It's possible that some or most of this insecurity comes from being abandoned by her father. All of the behaviors that I just listed are prime examples of what the modern internet would probably refer to as fatherless behavior. And while this is just a meme term used to stereotype people, it does come from a real place. There is actual research to suggest that teenage girls with an absent father figure are twice as likely to be promiscuous and act out. The idea is that girls who grew up without a father will seek male attention to fill that void. There's not a lot of focus on this, but it feels deliberate that Jennifer's father is never mentioned and her mom is single.
My mom has a date with that guy who owns the ham store.
In 2006, Jen was the Snowflake Queen. We never find out what that is. I'm assuming it's either a part in a school play or an honor given out at a winter-themed school dance, but it's clear that it's yet another cover of Jennifer's insecurity.
How could I ever be insecure? I was the Snowflake Queen.
In high school, Jen became a flag twirler on Color Guard, where she's featured front and center in the performances, the perfect spot to get attention from boys. But at the end of the day, an insecure teenager who spends her time watching fitness videos, browsing MySpace, and listening to Fall Out Boy in 2008 is not that out of the ordinary. But Jennifer's ordinary life became anything but on one February evening when an indie rock band she was fawning over tried to sacrifice her to Satan at the base of a waterfall while singing a Tommy Two-Tone song. To learn the meaning behind the often misunderstood oddities of Jennifer's body, the extra details only seen in the comic, how the character relates to the true story experienced by the screenwriter, and the secret that Big Pharma doesn't want you to know about PMS, then stick around to the end of this video. This video is sponsored by Factor. SaintTube, patron saint of online video, please give me the power to crush this vid. Welcome to Horror History. Jennifer's Body is the unapologetically emo 2009 comedy horror film about a high school succubus in the Midwest. It was directed by Karen Kusama and written by Diablo Cody. With a first name like Diablo, you know she's either an interesting artist type or a stripper. Turns out, it's both. An auteur is a filmmaker whose personal influence and artistic control over a movie are so great that the filmmaker is considered the author. This is usually a term used to refer to the director, but Diablo is an excellent example of an auteur screenwriter. For example, Minnesota is a place that's important to her because that's where she came out of her shell. And her first 3 feature film credits, Juno, Jennifer's Body, and Young Adult, are all set in Minnesota to reflect that period in her life. I bring this up because there's definitely a huge piece of Diablo in the character Jennifer Check, which I will be talking about. But first, as I was researching her for my script, I came to the realization that Diablo Cody is like a mirror image of me, minus her stripper saga and the divorces. For one, she's a huge horror movie fan. After she won the Oscar for her first script, Juno, she basically had free reign to do whatever she wanted, and she didn't hesitate to choose horror.
My entire life had dreamed of writing a horror movie. I'm a huge horror fan.
She also ghost wrote the 2013 Evil Dead and wrote the upcoming Lisa Frankenstein. Besides her love of horror and being a writer, she also seems to be interested in emo, which is very evident in the movie.
We definitely knew we wanted a rock sound, kind of a punk sound. I don't know if you noticed the Screeching Weasel is in the movie. That's one of my favorite bands.
Oh, great.
And then, of course, you guys and Paramore.
And she's apparently a huge roller coaster enthusiast.
I'm super obsessed with roller coasters. I've traveled all over. I've ridden hundreds of roller coasters.
Anyone who has seen my Final Destination 3 video or seen me in the comment section of every roller coaster YouTuber or just anyone who follows me on Instagram knows that coasters are one of my top 4 main passions. And on top of all that, she's from Chicago. But Diablo knew that her horror movie was going to be unlike any other. To understand her central character, let's take it back to the tragic day that changed everything. It must have been a warm winter in Minnesota, because it doesn't look all that cold on the day that Jennifer makes plans for herself and Needy to go see the band Low Shoulder at a local bar in February 2008, 2 months before the spring formal.
Just 2 months ago, me, Jennifer, and my boyfriend Chip were completely normal people.
Jennifer wants to see Low Shoulder because she likes the singer.
I saw their MySpace page, and the lead singer's extra salty. Plus, there'll be lots of other salty morsels there for you.
It's interesting that she uses terms like salty and morsels to describe attractive guys, both words you would typically use to describe food. It makes a metaphor that you probably already figured out even more clear. When she eventually goes on a cannibalistic rampage, it's an allegory for sleeping around. As they get ready to go, we see just how little respect Jennifer has for her supposed friend. She controls her wardrobe, talks down to her boyfriend Chip, and even physically pushes her against a door. When they arrive at Melody Lane, her true fatal flaw comes out, in both the figurative sense and a literal one. You don't have to be a succubus to take advantage of fresh, nutritious meals that'll boost your energy and leave you feeling great. For humans, I recommend Factor. Factor is the ready-to-eat meal delivery service that lets you skip the grocery store, prep work, and cooking fatigue. You don't even have to seduce your meals to a remote location to devour them in secret. Just jump on the app, choose what you want to eat, and they will send them right to your front door. In addition to their delicious lunch and dinner options, Factor now offers breakfast, smoothies, juices, and small bites to power you up and crush your New Year's goals. It's easy to fall into the trap of ordering takeout or delivery when you're busy, but Factor is cheaper, tastes better in my opinion, is faster because you heat it for just 2 minutes, and yet it still comes out tasting fresher than a meal that's been transported from a restaurant. I've been enjoying Factor for a year now, and honestly, just no complaints. I am energized and ready to crush YouTube with some fire content in 2024. Oh look, it's time for you to get Factor. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code CZ50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and free wellness shots for life. 2 free wellness shots from 3 available flavors for every order while you're an active subscriber. That's code CZ50 or click the link below for this life-changing deal. Whether it's due to lack of a father figure, a boredom with suburban life, or some other hidden factor, it's clear that Jennifer is trying to grow up too fast. As soon as they get there, she's talking about how she can't wait until she's old enough to get wasted, comments on all the guys she'd like to get with, and briefly demonstrates that she's already in an inappropriate relationship with a police cadet who's probably in his early 20s.
Oh, don't do that. Okay, not here.
Funny how Chris Pratt went from policing the smallest town ever to policing the whole dang galaxy. Jennifer acts confident in front of her friend, claiming that her boobs are like smart bombs that give her all the power over boys, but in practice, her insecurities surface and she's actually a super awkward flirt.
You play your instruments really super good.
She offers to buy the frontman, Nikolai, a drink, confident that she'll be able to convince the bartender to serve her because of her tits, and this actually works, no problem. But this quickly proves that she doesn't have the power over Nikolai, he has the power over her. During his performance, they make quite a bit of eye contact, and she looks transfixed, almost hypnotized by his performance. When the band's amplifier shorts out and starts a huge fire, she hardly seems to notice until Needy pulls her away to safety. Outside the venue, Nikolai finds them and invites them into his van for safety. It's one of the strangest scenes you'll ever see. Needy is traumatized, Jennifer is still spellbound, but Nikolai is casually drinking a beverage as people are being cooked alive in the building behind them. He gives Jen a sip of his drink, claiming it'll bring her out of shock. Then he pulls her along to the van as Needy tries to convince her to come back to town and get nachos at their favorite spot. Jennifer is being presented with a symbolic choice. She's a 16-year-old caught right on the line between childhood and adulthood. Going back to Needy represents safety, going back to the suburbs with her childhood friend and predictability. While going on with Nikolai and the band from the big city represents alcohol, sex, and danger, all things that she associates with growing up. Because she's so hypnotized by Nikolai, she chooses to go into the van with him. It's only after they drive off and she sees occult objects and books that she realizes she's in over her head and starts to freak out. When she hears one of the band members ask Nikolai if he's sure that she's a virgin, she lies, thinking she'll convince them not to try anything with her.
I'm a virgin. I've never even done sex. I don't know how. So, you guys should find somebody who does.
She doesn't realize it yet, but that's not what they're interested in. The band has plans to sacrifice a virgin to Satan under the waxing moon in exchange for legendary rock and roll fame. I've watched the whole sequence with the fire and the departure from the venue multiple times, trying to figure out if starting the fire was also part of the plan or part of the ritual. It appears to just be a random electrical fire, however, Nikolai acts so casually about it. It makes me think that the demon may have played a part in starting it, in order to give them a reason to take a young girl away in their van. There's also the fact that earlier on, Needy can be seen playing these pinball machines, Fire and Getaway. almost like they're predicting what's about to happen, as if a higher power has dictated their destiny. Also, the first thing that's likely to come to your mind when Jennifer gets into their van is that she's about to be a victim of something else, that she may be coerced into becoming an underage groupie. This is obviously a trope in the world of touring musicians from the early days of rock and roll that has persisted until the present. There's a whole TikTok trend of girls sharing outfits to try to get noticed by an artist at a concert. A lot of that is probably delusion, but as I said earlier, stereotypes do often come from somewhere. And sadly, there are cases where the adult musicians take advantage of unwavering fandom from their young fans. Low Shoulder's sacrifice of Jennifer is very much an allegory for that type of behavior, and this is briefly confirmed by Diablo Cody in an interview.
It is dealing with themes of like consent, assault, abuse of power.
And this can be seen in the way that they tie her down, and the knife represents...
Dude, that is a hot murder weapon.
Yeah, I think you get the idea. But the entire ritual hinges on the idea that Jennifer is actually a virgin, which, as we know, she is not. According to the books in the occult section at Devil's Kettle High Library, the ritual can still be performed, but may result in something known as demonic transference.
If the human sacrifice is impure, the result may still be attained, but the demon will forever reside in the soul of the victim. She must forever feed on flesh to sustain the demon.
The text goes on to elaborate. We don't see the entire page at any point, but by combining multiple shots, I was able to piece together most of it. Most of it's not that interesting, but there are a couple of things that I want to highlight. The Romans believed that some deities transferred to animals. This is why many sculptures of animals can be found near all Roman archaeological sites. We'll come back to that, but the result of the botched ritual is that Jennifer is turned into a succubus. There are surprisingly few examples of succubi appearing in movies, so I did some research. Paranormal research. Traditionally, a succubus is a demon that appears in a female form who seduces men in their sleep to steal their souls, or in some cases of the mythology, steal their semen in order to create evil children with the powers of witchcraft. The idea first started appearing in folklore around the medieval period. It may have been a legend created to try to explain the phenomenon of wet dreams or even sleep paralysis. Jennifer's body has a unique spin on the legend, wherein the succubus eats males as a means of satiating the demon's hunger and giving it power. The library books mention flesh eating and rapacious feeding. The demon becomes weaker as it gets hungry, and eating flesh will revitalize her power. So although she should have been killed by the knife wounds, she survived due to demonic transference, and woke up alone, not able to remember anything. Going back to our rock and roll tour bus metaphor, this represents the idea of her getting roofied and blacking out. In this case, her supernatural abilities are an allegory for changes experienced during puberty. That's why she's seducing and eating boys, and her strange behavior could be explained as puberty-induced mood swings. For example, she wanders back to Needy's house and sneaks into her kitchen. She's totally silent, only flashing her friend a red smile before pulling a rotisserie chicken out of the fridge and eating it off the ground. She would later explain that she was hungry but didn't want to kill her best friend, so she went for the chicken instead. Always a good choice, but her new demonic sensibilities seem to reject it. And she ends up projectile vomiting this black, spiky sludge. It seems to be her body's way of rejecting normal human food and telling her that she won't be able to sustain herself with anything other than human flesh. She starts laughing like a maniac when she realizes this. It's not a happy laugh, it's more of a weird coping thing. She's taken advantage of Needy her entire life, and now she's ironically going to have to eat her. So she pins her friend to the wall and begins to bite her neck, but in the end, she can't bring herself to do it and disappears into the night. As she wandered back home, she encountered Ahmet, an Indian exchange student that she had been eyeing earlier. He becomes her first victim when she takes him into the woods and devours him to restore some of the demon's power. It's clear that she doesn't yet realize that she's become a succubus. She just sees her new impulses as natural changes. The next day, the fire at Melody Lane and the 47 lives lost is the talk of the school, but Jennifer shows up with a new lease on life. At school in the morning, Needy is surprised to see Jennifer looking completely normal, and she plays off the bizarre events of the previous night as Needy overreacting again. She's also completely unfazed to learn about the people who died in the fire, even after finding out the casualties included 8 students and a teacher.
Sucks to be them, I guess.
Jennifer is back to being her usual toxic self, but she kind of takes it to a new level that makes her seem straight up sociopathic, while the rest of the community is in shambles. After school, she approaches the school football captain, Jonas Kozel, who is really emotionally distraught. On the surface, it looks like he's upset about losing his best friend Craig in the fire. However, Jennifer and a select few others know that just one day earlier, Jonas was in a fight with Craig over a girl, so the emotions he's feeling are really rooted in self-pity and low self-esteem. This makes it easy for her to manipulate him. She takes him to a spot in the woods that's popular for hookups, telling him it's what Craig would have wanted. They find themselves surrounded by a huge assortment of wild animals. This is probably one of the strangest mysteries surrounding Jennifer. This could be connected to the text in the demonology books from the library, claiming that Romans believed that sometimes demonic transference would transfer the entity into animals, leading them to create grand animal sculptures. Another idea I had is that this is supposed to be like a fairy tale moment, like the animals in Snow White. Basically to create the idea that everything is going to be okay for Jonas. Things are going to get better now that he and Jennifer are together, when in reality they're just lining up for his leftovers after what happens next. Jennifer slams him into a tree and transforms into the flesh-ripping form of the Succubus, where she proceeds to chow down and devour his insides, finally replenishing her and relieving the demon's hunger. To clean the carnage off of herself, she jumps in the lake and goes for a swim. When she gets out, you can see the steam coming off of her. That night, she tells Needy that she's feeling better than ever, and she famously burns her tongue with a lighter and watches it heal immediately. She even calls herself a god and starts asking about Needy's boyfriend as if she's interested. Devouring Jonas seems to give her a huge boost, and she appears to be the only happy person in the school, though she at least seems to keep a low enough profile for Jonas's funeral. Earlier, I mentioned that Jen's cannibalistic rampage is actually a metaphor for her sleeping around. We know that she has insecurity problems, so it's obvious that she's using these encounters to boost her self-esteem. In a literal sense, her health is improving because the consumption of human flesh gives the demon power to sustain her. But what this really represents is her going to bed with someone to boost her ego, feeling the emotional high that comes with that for a little while, then sinking back into being miserable again. If she doesn't keep feeding, the demon's hunger will always return. This is a temporary solution that never addresses the root of the issue. Shortly after, Jennifer gets paired up with local Green Day influencee Colin Gray in science class, and although it's awkward at first, they bond over their love of the punk rock band The Dwarves and eventually become friends, at least in Colin's eyes. Jennifer doesn't seem to have any respect for him outside of class. Meanwhile, the band Low Shoulder gains national radio recognition, and they're celebrated as the heroes of the Melody Lane tragedy. Their song Through the Trees is sung at a candlelight vigil for the victims, and it becomes the town's unofficial anthem over the course of the next month. I have to imagine that this really agitated Jennifer, because not only does she know firsthand that they're evil, but they literally tried to sacrifice her in exchange for their fame. When she finds out that they'll be releasing a benefit single for the victims, she comments on how she thinks the production is poor. She also tells Needy that she's not feeling great, which leads to my favorite line of hers.
Are you PMSing or something?
PMS isn't real, Needy. It was invented by the boy-run media to make us seem crazy.
She also makes an offhand comment about how it must be wearing off. It's been a month since she turned Jonas into an after-school snack, so the demonic benefits are starting to dissipate. But despite looking like what she refers to as one of the normal girls, she's still garnering attention from her male classmates, and Colin invites her to a showing of Rocky Horror, which she initially turns down because she, quote, doesn't like boxing movies. Colin is so dumbfounded by this comment that he just gives up and walks away, which is 100% the right response. It's not until Needy mentions that she actually thinks Colin is really cool that Jennifer changes her mind and invites him over to her place. This just shows her insecurity peeking through again. She's literally not interested in him until she realizes she can use him as a means of dominating Needy. However, the address that she gives him is not her house, it's a construction site. She's decorated an upstairs room with candlelights and a blanket and leaves some music playing, waiting for him to arrive, and when he does, she tries to get down to it immediately. We see a pack of rats run in their direction, similar to how her encounter with Jonas attracted some wild animals a month earlier. Her eyes suddenly go yellow, and she backs him into a sharp tool.
Ooh, puncture wound. God, that's so emo.
That was totally uncalled for. She twists and snaps his forearm, and as she finishes him off, that is, finishes killing him, the last thing he hears is this phrase.
I need you frightened. I need you hopeless.
And while all this is going on, it's intercut with Needy, who is with her boyfriend at the time, and she inexplicably starts repeating the word hopeless as she sees visions of Jennifer's victims. For the sake of time, I'm not going to speculate on this unless I do a Needy episode in the future, but I bring it up because the word hopeless becomes a theme between the two. Basically, part of their relationship involves Jennifer keeping her best friend under her thumb by constantly knocking her down in order to raise herself up. My speculation is that when she says, I need you hopeless, that's really directed at Needy, who's the reason that she invited Colin over in the first place. Anyway, after growing out her fangs, she tears Colin apart with them, then crouches down and slurps up his blood. After this, she crosses through the woods and climbs out into the street, where she's nearly hit by Needy's car. Needy manages to avoid the collision, but Jennifer jumps on her windshield, cracking it and flashes a bloody smile. She most likely wants to intimidate Needy and basically continue to dominate her, so she sneaks into her house and waits for her in her bed. This not only demonstrates that Jennifer knows about Needy's feelings towards her, but she's also willing to manipulate them in order to have control over her.
Hi.
Needy screams at her to get out, but she just kind of downplays it, reminding her that they used to share a bed together during slumber parties. She tries to calm her down by playing with her hair, and it leads to something a little bit more intimate. We know this isn't their first kiss, but based on Needy's reaction, I'm guessing it may be their second. And the chemistry cannot be understated. You know the YouTube channel Movie Clips? The channel that just posts clips from pretty much every movie? They posted 5 clips from Jennifer's body, but this kissing scene is by far the most popular. At the time of writing this, it has 419 million views, making it the 4th most watched movie clip of all time. The comment section just kinda says it all. Special thanks to Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried for making my teenage years 10 times more complicated with this scene. This scene is amazing. You can see how Needy is slowly seduced by Jennifer and how she gives in to some hidden desire she had. My hormone-crazed teen self took 5 hours to finish this movie. You know what? I think we can stop reading the comments. The point is that this scene really stuck with people, but this intimate encounter would not be the only reason their friendship would be forever changed. When Needy finally breaks out of the trance that Jennifer has her in and realizes how weird all this is, she threatens to call the police over the gory incident that she saw Jennifer in shortly beforehand. But she's reminded that Jennifer is sleeping with a cadet, which she believes will give her immunity. She decides to finally explain everything that happened on the night of the fire: the satanic indie band, the attempted sacrifice, 8675309, eating a Met, and her newfound powers. When she's full, she can't be killed, and any wounds heal instantly. When Needy starts to ask too many questions, which start to sound like accusations, Jen suggests that maybe she should talk to a shrink about her disturbing thoughts, basically implying that these are all Needy's ideas and she's not planning on admitting to any wrongdoing. When asked to leave again, she jumps out the top floor window and disappears into the night. Another month passes by, and without having eaten any new boys, Jennifer's physical condition worsens again. Meanwhile, the newest worry in town has become this cannibal serial killer targeting teenage boys.
Ladies pepper spray.
There's obviously a sicko out there who likes boys.
And I think this kind of ties back into the violation/assault themes that I talked about during the ritual scene. Jennifer had this horrible thing happen to her, and it turned her into this monster. Now she's turning the traditional safety procedures on their head, and it's the boys who have to arm themselves with self-defense tactics usually reserved for women. This is where Needy's research into the occult convinces her that Jennifer's planning to make a buffet out of the Devil's Kettle High spring formal dance, which would take place on April 18th, 2008.
Jennifer's evil.
I know.
No, I mean, she's actually evil. Not high school evil.
Low Shoulder is taking a night off their national tour to play the small town school dance, which, to me, feels like a reference to Fall Out Boy's music video, Dance Dance, where they play a homecoming dance.
So it gets to listen to be like this for guys like us.
No way, man. One night could change it all.
All right, ladies, break it up! What are you looking at, Powder Puff?
Fall Out Boy owns their own record label called Decadence, and many of their artists are featured on the Jennifer's Body soundtrack, which is fire, not to mention the Fall Out Boy poster seen in Jennifer's room. However, Jennifer doesn't go to the dance. Instead, she intercepts Chip in the park he usually cuts through to get to the school, using some kind of teleportation or super speed ability to sneak up ahead of him when he looks back. She attempts to give Chip an explanation for Needy's pulling away from the relationship as of late, telling him that she was upset because her and Colin were intimate. She doesn't mince words.
And by that, I mean they were porking on a semi-regular basis.
This is another ultra-toxic attempt for her to get between Needy and Chip. The real reason Needy is pulling away is because she knows Jennifer is dangerous. If she killed Colin Gray just out of jealousy because Needy said he was cool, what is she gonna do to the boy that Needy actually has a relationship with? There's an important detail in the comic that I think tells us a lot about Jennifer's behavior. Needy Lesnicki is my very best friend. Jennifer may be more popular and get more attention from boys, but nothing that happens in her dating life ever amounts to a relationship. We never see anything resembling another meaningful friendship even. As much as she would never admit it, she's jealous of what Needy has with Chip and insecure about becoming less important in the eyes of her only friend. So she sabotages Needy and Chip's relationship, and when the distance between them is at its greatest, she tries to move in on Chip, telling him that she's always cared about him, and that Needy never deserved him in the first place. It's clear that this is more about Needy than it is about Chip when she says this.
Say it like you mean it. Say I'm better than Needy.
They relocate to an abandoned pool where the word hopeless is graffitied above the water, the same word that comes up time and time again in connection to Jennifer trying to socially isolate her friend. The artwork on the wall also makes it look like they're coming out of a Roman temple, which could be connected to the information about the shrines to demonic transference at Roman archaeological sites seen in the occultism books in the library. It could also be connected to the police cadet that Jennifer's sleeping with, whose name is Roman. Jennifer tries to kiss Chip again, but this time he pulls away, telling her that it feels weird. This sends her into a rage. She throws him into the pool and thrashes him around, leaving him unable to escape. After digging her fangs into his neck, Needy shows up and, let's just say, spoils the moment.
Saint Jude, patron saint of all causes, please give me the power to crush this.
And there's that word again, hopeless. Needy pulls her under the water's surface and she disappears momentarily before re-emerging and immediately getting maced in the face with Chip's pepper spray. This causes her to projectile vomit that black substance that we saw earlier when she attempted to eat the chicken. After this, she stops holding back, levitating out of the pool and floating in midair. It's here that the root of the tension that's been bubbling for Jennifer and Needy's entire lives is finally addressed. A lifetime of frustrations from their relationship comes pouring out as Needy calls Jen out for being a bad friend, chastises her for going after Chip when she, according to Needy, could have anyone, and exposes her insecurities about her looks and social relevance. It's clear that Needy has never stood up to her like this before, and it sends Jennifer into an absolute rage.
I am going to eat your soul and shit it out, Nikki!
Thought you only murdered boys.
I go both ways.
But she's stopped in her tracks when Chip impales her with a pool net, which ironically is the second time we've seen that on my channel lately. Since she hasn't had a meal in about a month, she doesn't regenerate right away, so she climbs out of the pool house and escapes. In the comic, she cuts through a graveyard to get home, and she's once again followed by an assorted pack of wild animals. Her condition continues to worsen as she returns home to circle boys in the yearbook, but in this case, instead of circling boys that she wants to go out with, she's circling the ones that she wants to devour. The salty ones, as she would probably put it. As she's about to drift to sleep, Needy breaks in through her window and a fight to the death ensues. Like the sacrifice scene, there's definitely an underlying theme here in relation to the romantic tension between the two. Needy's weapon of choice is a box cutter.
You know what this is for? It's for cutting boxes.
It took me a while to figure out what the meaning of this line was, but I think it calls back to a mostly forgotten slang term from the 2000s where female genitals were sometimes referred to as the box. So by threatening to cut the box, Needy is symbolically moving on from her feelings towards her BFF. There's also the fact that the two used to play in the sandbox together since their childhood.
Sandbox love never dies.
Jennifer levitates both of them into the air, but the deciding factor is when Needy pulls off her BFF necklace, symbolically cutting the ties of loyalty that she has to her abusive friend, and this sends her crashing down to the mattress, where Needy finishes it by jamming the box cutter into her ex-best friend's heart. As the library books foretold, demons are weakest when hungry, but a blade to the heart is the surest way to kill the beast.
My dead. No. Your heart.
It's one last joke in a story filled with funny quips, but it's also the perfect final moment for Jennifer. As Needy put it early on, tits were her trademark. They were what she used to get what she wanted at the bar and to get what she wanted from the boys in her class. But relying on a superficial beauty signifier prevented her from forming any real, deep, heart-to-heart connections. Diablo Cody actually credits this as her favorite line in the film. And what happens next really drives home the main idea. Jennifer's mom hears the commotion and comes into the room to find Needy pulling the box cutter out of her daughter. It's the first time that we see Mrs. Check, and it's a reminder that after everything, Jennifer was just a kid, or at least a teen who was trying to grow up too fast and got burned by a group of rockers trying to use her. Needy drops the box cutter on this Flag Team magazine. Again, something only a teenager would have. Through it all, Jennifer was a victim as well as a villain. She didn't ask to be turned into a succubus, and all of the strange behavior that followed represents her going through the changes that come with puberty and adulthood. But because she's not ready for any of that, she doesn't handle it well at all. You could say that her maturity was stunted that day when Low Shoulder took advantage of her, something that we've talked about before when discussing victims of trauma on Horror History. Abuse, neglect, exposure to violence, lack of attachment, and other adverse childhood experiences affect the structure and chemistry of the brain and can stunt its natural growth and maturation. These negative experiences have an effect not only in childhood, but throughout life. Adult relationships, grief, and the dissolution of childhood friendships are just a few of the challenges that she does a very poor job of coping with. That's my analysis of the character, and I pretty much know that it is correct. Not only because screenwriter Diablo Cody and I are practically the same person, but because she's actually spoken about the themes of Jennifer's body in interviews. The theme of Jennifer's body, said Cody, is about the horror of being a teenager. A person who is under the influence of hormones and jealousy in society is by nature combustible and scary and unpredictable. And I think anyone who's ever lived with a teenager knows this to be true. And Jennifer herself is in a special kind of hell, where her self-worth completely revolves around her sexuality and who she is as a body or a package, so that's how we began the movie. And this is also kind of a recurring theme for Cody, whose previous film, Juno, also deals with a character who is forced to grow up too quickly, a girl who gets pregnant at age 16. Juno uses the same kind of imagery that Jennifer's body does to highlight the contrast between the young girl at the center of the story and the very adult decisions that she's forced to make, like the call with the abortion clinic on this hamburger phone that looks like a toy. They even both have the same grading classmate.
God appreciates your miracle! Low Shoulder are American heroes?
Even though Juno takes place in a realistic world, there are still a lot of similarities. It seems likely that this recurring idea of the teenage girl forced into the adult world is a personal one for Cody, who sees needy Les Nikki as a representation of herself.
What I was really basing it on was myself, because I was going through this transition in my own life. I really am in real life a needy, okay? Like, I'm a bookish, insecure, cowardly person, and my real name is Brooke. And I had created this Diablo Cody persona to survive and to get attention, which is something that I desperately needed at that time in my life, because nobody ever listened to me. Suddenly, for the very first time in my life, people were interested. It was definitely like a sort of autobiographical for me writing that movie.
Was Jennifer then the projection of your alter ego then? Needy and Jennifer were Brooke and Diablo?
Exactly.
After releasing Jennifer's body, Diablo decided to step away from public life. She got pregnant a month later and focused her efforts on being a mother. The moment where Needy plunges that box cutter through Jennifer Check's heart symbolized Brooke Morio, killing off her flashier, attention-seeking alter ego, Diablo Cody. She stopped going to red carpets, and she took a break from being on the internet. To this day, she has no presence on social media, which means one of you will have to put this video on a Blu-ray and mail it to her. But even though people in her personal life have gotten used to calling her Brooke again, she still continued to release content under the name Diablo Cody. It would seem that the alter ego survived in at least one small way. Does this mean that Jennifer Check survived too? That she's been living in the shadows waiting to make her return? Maybe. In a 2023 interview, the writer stated, "I'm obsessed with the idea of doing something new in the world of Jennifer's body, so we'd have to go back to Devil's Kettle, Minnesota for that. I originally planned to pitch it as TV, but I think it's shaping up to be a movie. We'll see." Yeah, Diablo, if you're currently watching this on a Blu-ray that someone sent you in the mail, please make it a movie and not TV. It's interesting how she says it's something in the world of Jennifer's body. It leaves open a lot of possibilities. Perhaps some demonic power keeps Jennifer alive or brings her back to life. But maybe she's only being kept alive in spirit through her former friend. After she's killed in Jennifer's body, we learn that Needy inherited some of her powers.
Most occult scholars don't know this, but if you're bitten by a demon and you live, you just might absorb some of the demon's abilities.
For Needy, this seems to include levitation and super strength. But for Brooke Morio, moving to Minnesota and reinventing herself as Diablo Cody was necessary for her to break out of her bubble and take a step forward professionally. She no longer feels the need to use that name in her personal life, but still occasionally calls upon that alter ego. Jennifer's Body has become a cult classic in the horror community, but it's just one of the greater coming-of-age genre. For the full picture, you'll need to check out my other coming-of-age analyses, like my video on Carrie. You can find those in the playlist on the left. Remember to subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week, ring the death bell for all notifications, and I'll see you in the next one. Assuming we both survive.